Good morning and welcome to Robyn Scherer Photography. Today we're going to talk about cropping and the impact it can have on your images. So let's dig in. First of all, only 10 to 15% of your image should be cropped. And why would we crop to begin with? Well, you crop to draw your viewer's eye in and direct them where you want them to be looking, and it increases the impact of your image. So let's get started with this one. So this is Sook, straight out of camera. So there's a lot in this image. So what I want the viewer to focus on is obviously my subject. So first of all, I'll go ahead and pop on my preset that I like to use, and then I will brighten it up, and I like it to be a little bit warmer, and I'll brighten that up, and I will go ahead and check her skin tone. So we want to pick a highlight around here. So that RGB on the target for any Caucasian person, your goal is to have 85, 78, 68. So we're pretty close here. Another option is 75, 65, 55. And if you want to watch any of my other videos on skin tone, you can dig into that. We won't go into skin tone right now, but I do always check to make sure my skin tone is correct and creamy. That is my goal. So I feel like this is good. We're going to leave it here. So now let's dig into the cropping. If you go to your cropping tool here, you can choose any of these dimensions. So I normally do an 8x10. I have the rule of thirds on right now. If you go up to the top of your Lightroom to tools, and you can see the crop guide overlay, this will go through all of your options for cropping. So this will give you the grid. Let's go into tools, and then you can do the thirds. So the grid, I will tell you right now, I don't ever use this. This is a lot of lines. Can't really tell where I want my viewer to go. Now, when you're in the tool here, you see how the arrows are, there's 2 points on the side of this. That means you can alter this and turn it and rotate it. So I'll straighten it up a smidge here. But again, with this grid, I can't tell exactly where I want my viewer to be looking. So if I go back into tools and crop guide overlay and I go to the thirds, when you have the rule of thirds, ideally you want where your viewer to look to be on these crosshairs, somewhere about here. You can also use these lines for horizons or areas where you want to kind of frame your image. So I might even put this line up here and frame it there, and so she's in the center. But if you immediately look at that, I don't love it. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to want to do this. So not only is she on one of the rules of third, she is on a crosshair, and so by nature the viewer's eye will go right there. So let's go into tools and crop guide overlay. You have fifths. Again, you can kind of choose where you want to put your subject with these crosshairs. I don't love the fifths, so I'm going to go to the overlay. We'll go to diagonal. I have used this for different things. Again, you could put your subject right here, smack in the middle. You can use these lines if you had some diagonals in your frame to kind of line them up. And again, that gives you a greater impact with your image, and you're kind of eliminating stuff that doesn't matter. Going back into the guide overlay, we will go to center. This is quite obvious. You would just have her dead center. Again, that's going to draw your viewer's eye in to where you want them to be viewing. Tools, guide overlay. Let's go into triangle. Now I have used this before too, because I can put her here. Again, that brings the viewer's eye in. And that is what you're doing with your image. You're really trying to get the greatest impact with your image. Now, the more you photograph, I will say you'll get better at realizing where you want to place your subject while you're photographing. So I've gotten really good myself at using the rule of thirds when I'm in my viewfinder, and I typically put my client somewhere on those crosshairs. So let's go back in here and go to the golden ratio. Now this is a little bit tighter rule of thirds, and the golden spiral. I have used this, again, I kind of use it for special instances. Again, I don't love this one, but it does work. And then we'll go into, so that was the spiral. We'll go into the aspect ratios. So now this shows you, let's say I'm kind of eyeball her on the rule of thirds. This shows you what a 4x5 would look like, a 1x1, which is Instagram, a 2x3, a 5x7. It gives you an idea of if you were to, let's put her on the rule of thirds. So now I have her, and then I use this to straighten this up here. I have her where I would typically put her when I'm cropping my images and I'm getting rid of superfluous items in the frame. This gives me a little foreground. This gives me, a guiding line to my subject, and then the rule of thirds naturally guides you to see your subject, your viewer, to go right to your subject. So with this rule of thirds on, and I go back into guide overlay in my aspects, this shows me exactly what's going to be cut off. For example, here's the this is the square. So her boot, we would lose some of the boot if I were to post this on Instagram, cropping how I had with the rule of thirds. I would have to move her up to get the whole boot in. And then you can see with the 4x5, 5x7. So it shows you, if you were to print this into a photograph, a print, it shows you what you'll lose and what you'll keep in the frame. So that is very helpful with the aspect ratios. And then let's see here, cycle the grid overlay. So I believe if you go into option O, let's see, should be able to cycle through here. And the cycle grid. So the cycle grid overlay should be just, there we go. Let me go back and show you this. Cycle grid overlay. So if you see how this letter O, so if I say that, and then I just use the letter O, I can cycle through all the overlays. And I'm going to put it back at the rule of thirds. Now, cycle grid overlay orientation, you're going to use the up arrow and the letter O. So if I hold the up arrow and then the letter O, see how it rotated it? And the spiral rotated. So that just shows you how you can cycle through your grid overlay. So if I go back to the rule of thirds, that's how I'm going to crop. That's what I prefer. Hit enter, you have it in there. So before I let you go, I want you to drop a comment in and let me know what's your favorite aspect ratio, what's your favorite overlay, anything like that. I would love to hear from you. So before we go, let's go into the tool removal. It looks like we had an update. So now if you use generative AI and I identify that, I want to get rid of that, and I want to get rid of this, and then I say subtract it, it's going to remove those items, and it normally does a very nice job, the generative AI. I will show you. So that does a pretty decent job. It left this there for some reason. So if I go back in and I uncheck this, This is a faster way to get rid of items, although a lot of times it doesn't do the best job. This time it did a great job. So if I go back in and I hit generative AI and I hit it here and here, let's say I want to get rid of this, subtract. Now, the generative AI, I also have a video on if you want to watch that. It goes into more depth regarding using that and when and why you want to use the different options there. But that normally does a great job. And backslash will show you before, after. Again, removing those items, it just brings more impact to your subject because your eye is not moving around looking at the different things in the frame. So that's your whole goal of cropping and removing items that don't add to the story. And that's another big topic when you are cropping. What is adding to the story and what is taking away from it? So keep that in mind. Anyways, all right, so hit subscribe if you want to see more. Go ahead and watch the other videos regarding skin tone and removing objects. Again, leave a comment on what's your favorite cropping tool. And that's it. Have a great day.